On the island of Kos, in the year 430 BC, a man walks barefoot on the white stones warmed by the Mediterranean sun. His gaze is absorbed, his mind struck by an intuition destined to change the course of medicine forever. It is Hippocrates, the physician of Kos, the first to conceive of healing not as an act of domination over man, but as a collaboration with nature. Between his fingers he holds a papyrus scroll, and with a steady hand penning words destined to reverberate through the ages, he writes, "Let your food be your medicine, and your medicine be your food." He could not have imagined then that this saying would transcend millennia, outlast library fires, dissolved empires, and cultural renaissances, to echo through the corridors of modern universities. Yet over time, its authentic message would be betrayed by the very medicine that bore his name. Every physician today swears the Hippocratic oath, but few remember the true teachings of the master of Kos. The truth he discovered was too simple to be embraced by systems that thrive on complexity and artificial mystery. Hippocrates did not invent drugs, nor did he devise miraculous surgical instruments. He observed nature, placed his trust in it, and from it derived the science of healing. He saw that those who fasted healed more quickly, that pure water restored more than 1,000 potions, that wild herbs soothed pains inaccessible to the most elaborate remedies. He understood that the human body contains an internal physician, an ordering principle that needs only to remain unimpeded. For centuries, his wisdom remained fragmented in ancient texts that few read and even fewer applied. The first of his teachings concerns bread, a sacred food for the ancient Greeks. Why was the bread they ate a source of strength and healing, while modern bread breeds inflammation and disease? The answer lies in a fragment of the Corpus Hippocraticum in the treatise on diet, in which Hippocrates noted, "Barley bread is heavy and difficult to digest, but it strengthens. Refined wheat bread is light, but weakens over time." This was not a casual observation, but the fruit of decades of clinical experience at the medical school of Kos. The ancients made bread with whole grains, slowly fermented for days, from grains grown in rich, uncontaminated soil. Barley, a favorite food of athletes, and wheat, stone ground with the germ and bran intact, were subjected to lengthy fermentations. During these fermentations, natural yeasts pre-digested the gluten, making it more tolerable and absorbable. Thus, 2.5 millennia later, a group of researchers from King's College London, led by Dr. Tim Spector, published a study in the journal Cell Metabolism in 2018 that confirmed Hippocratic intuition. Sourdough bread, fermented for 18 hours, produces less inflammation, better glycemic control, and greater diversity of the gut microbiota than industrial bread. This demonstrates how the slowness and naturalness of the process are crucial. Harvard scientists with Dr. Fasano's studies have also demonstrated that the problem lies not only in gluten, but in the way wheat is processed. Ancient varieties, such as spelt and einkorn, contained more digestible proteins. The lengthy fermentation process further decomposed them, feeding the intestinal bacteria that produce short-chain fatty acids, molecules that protect the intestine and reduce inflammation. Hippocrates considered bread a true medicine, especially when prepared with respect for time and natural processes. He recommended toasted barley water for fevers and digestive disorders, a beverage that research now confirms as anti-inflammatory thanks to its beta-glucan content. For the ancients, bread was more than nourishment. It was a ritual and a symbol. Each grain, in becoming food, underwent a sacred metamorphosis. Fermentation was perceived as an alchemical act in which invisible microorganisms transmuted the crude into the nutritious. Eating real bread meant participating in an act of communion with the earth, not a soulless industrial process. However, the 19th century Industrial Revolution disrupted this balance. New steel mills separated the germ and bran from the grain, creating white flours that were long-lived but lifeless. In the 1960s, the industry introduced rapid yeasts and chemical additives capable of completing fermentation in 2 hours. The result was a product that still bears the name bread, but which Hippocrates would not have recognized. Reclaiming this sacred bread today doesn't require extreme sacrifices, but rather discernment. Choose naturally leavened breads, fermented for at least 12 hours. Favor whole grains and ancient varieties like spelt, rye, or barley, and moderate the quantity, since for Hippocrates, the supreme virtue was balance. 2 or 3 slices of real bread nourish, 6 of industrial bread inflame. The Greek physician didn't preach abstinence, but moderation. He encouraged us to observe the body as a personal laboratory, to experiment and gain direct experience. Thus, every time you choose authentic bread over an industrial substitute, you pay homage to ancient wisdom and, at the same time, to modern science, which has rediscovered its truth. Yet, if we've forgotten the art of making bread, what else have we lost? Hippocrates spoke not only of grains, but of another primordial element, so simple it's overlooked, yet so powerful it represents the first medicine of every day: water. For the father of medicine, pure water, taken at the right time and in the right way, preceded any remedy or decoction. On the island of Kos, there were springs considered sacred, and although Hippocrates did not believe in the magic of holy waters, he sensed that not all waters were the same. In his treatise, On Waters, Plains, and Places, he wrote, "Whoever wishes to investigate medicine must first consider the seasons, the winds, and the waters, for just as they differ in flavor and weight, so too do their properties." For him, water was not only a means of hydration, but a vehicle of vital communication between every cell in the body. Modern science has finally understood what he observed empirically. Iranian physician Feridun Batman-Khalij demonstrated that many symptoms treated with drugs, headaches, chronic fatigue, joint pain, constipation, anxiety, actually stem from systemic dehydration. A 2013 study from the University of Connecticut revealed that even a 1.5% water deficit alters mood, concentration, and pain perception. The brain, composed of 75% water, literally contracts during dehydration. And Japanese research in 2018 confirmed that drinking water upon awakening stimulates the parasympathetic nervous system, improves intestinal motility, and prepares the body for the day. 25 centuries earlier, Hippocrates recommended the same practice: pure water in the morning, cold baths to invigorate, hot ones to soothe, and sea baths to purify. Water was his liquid pharmacy, a universal and accessible remedy. He taught that water, in contact with the body, acts as a messenger of life. It flows, purifies, dissolves, transmits invisible energy. For Hippocrates, every spring, every sea, every drop held a unique virtue, so much so that he prescribed sea baths for skin ailments, cold compresses to reduce fevers, and warm herbal steams to relieve joint pain. Water, in its mutability, embodied the harmony of opposites: heat and coolness, stillness and movement, lightness and depth. Today, hydrotherapy confirms the wisdom of these observations. Studies conducted at the University of Freiburg have shown that thermal baths reduce inflammation and improve circulation, while alternating hot and cold jets strengthens the immune system, as Dr. Feldman illustrated in 2020. Water is therefore a medium of regeneration and also symbolically represents a return to the origin. Immersing oneself means returning to the primordial womb, the liquid matrix of life. Drinking water mindfully is equivalent to recognizing one's connection to the cosmic cycle: ocean, cloud, rain, spring, body, ocean again. Water medicine today requires no shrines or sacred springs. Small daily gestures, performed with presence, suffice. Upon awakening, before coffee or the digital hubbub, 2 glasses of warm water reactivate the organs, stimulate the kidneys, cleanse the liver, and awaken the lymphatic system. Daily water intake, calculated at approximately 30 milliliters per kilogram of body weight, should be adjusted according to climate, physical activity, and consumption of dehydrating substances such as coffee or alcohol. Quality, however, is more important than quantity. Water must be pure, filtered, free of chemical residues and plastics that alter its essence. Even baths, far from being simply hygienic, become therapeutic. 20 minutes of immersion in hot water with magnesium salts releases muscular and mental tension. A warm bath with essential oils calms the mind, while a cold bath revives vitality. Hippocrates even taught us to observe our urine, a true reflection of our water balance. If it is dark, the body needs refreshment. Finally, he warned us to drink before we feel thirsty, since thirst is already a sign of deficiency. For him, therefore, water was not simply a liquid, but the oldest preventative medicine, the most accessible, and the most powerful. We are creatures made of water rather than solid matter, rivers enclosed within our skin. However, for Hippocrates, there existed an even more prodigious, seemingly paradoxical practice, capable of regenerating the body without adding anything, but by subtracting, fasting. Fasting, for Hippocrates, was not deprivation, but rather a healing discipline. He observed that when the body is overloaded, the cure lies not in nourishing it, but in allowing it rest. In the 4th century BC, to those who arrived in Kos with fever or inflammation, the doctor did not administer decoctions or restorative banquets, but rather prescribed water and tranquility. In his aphorisms, he wrote, "The more one nourishes the bodies not yet purified, the more they harm themselves. Fasting and rest cure many illnesses." This insight, derided at the time, would be echoed 25 centuries later, when science revealed its biological foundations. He noted that sick animals instinctively stop eating. Humans, however, have lost that natural instinct. Hippocrates students recorded cases in which 3 days of fasting accelerated healing that conventional remedies failed to achieve. He could not have known that, in the metabolic silence of fasting, cells activate a renewal process we now call autophagy, a term coined from the Greek auto, oneself, and phagein, to eat. In 2016, Japanese scientist Yoshinori Osumi was awarded the Nobel Prize for explaining its mechanisms. During fasting, cells consume their damaged components, recycling them for regeneration. The body thus purifies itself from within, delays aging, strengthens immunity, and protects against cancer. Subsequently, Dr. Walter Longo of the University of Southern California demonstrated that 3 to 5 days of fasting stimulates complete regeneration of the immune system, as obsolete cells are eliminated and replaced by new ones. The body, suspended from constant ingestion, finds a way to renew itself. The ancients, without understanding its biochemistry, spoke of a purification of the soul. Science today speaks of cellular rejuvenation. Intermittent fasting, practiced even unknowingly by the Greeks, consisted of long intervals between meals, in harmony with solar rhythms. Modern research confirms its benefits: improved insulin sensitivity, reduced inflammation, and synchronization of circadian rhythms. But for Hippocrates, fasting was also a spiritual act, not a punishment, but a liberation. Stopping eating silenced internal noise, making room for clear thinking and profound healing. Fasting meant trusting the body's wisdom, believing in its spontaneous intelligence. Applying it today requires no asceticism, but graduality. Begin with 12 hours between dinner and breakfast, gradually extending to 16, during which time you consume only water, herbal teas, or bitter coffee. Choose 1 day a week to reduce meals to 2 or 1, allowing the digestive system to rest. And in times of fatigue or inflammation, allow yourself 24 hours of water and calm. Fasting, however, is not suitable for those who are pregnant, breastfeeding, or suffering from serious illnesses, as, like any medicine, it must be used with discernment. It is always advisable to consult a doctor before undertaking prolonged fasting practices. When breaking the fast, do so gently, eating soft fruits or light broths, not heavy meals. The body, like a river that begins to flow again, requires gradualness. Thus, each period of abstinence becomes an act of trust in its innate healing power. It is the body's silence that allows its inner physician to work undisturbed. Yet Hippocrates knew that fasting alone was not enough. Nature offers human hands generous plants, charged with therapeutic power, often humble and ignored. He walked barefoot through the hills of Kos, gathering herbs that others would have mistaken for weeds: wild garlic, fennel, mint, oregano, thyme. While physicians of rival schools sought exotic ingredients and complex potions, he returned with simple bunches of herbs, maintaining that power lies in simplicity. In De Natura Hominis, he described over 400 medicinal plants, noting their effects, doses, and methods of use. His was a science of observation, not magic. Garlic, which he considered the rose of hell, was used as a natural antibiotic, crushed with honey for respiratory infections, raw for intestinal parasites, mixed with olive oil for stubborn wounds. Fennel was used to soothe swelling and colic, mint to calm headaches and nausea, oregano to disinfect food and wounds. And modern science, centuries later, has confirmed this truth. Studies from Washington State University, 2001, demonstrated that garlic's allicin possesses extraordinarily effective antibacterial and antiviral properties. Other research highlighted fennel's ability to reduce intestinal spasms and inflammation, while mint, thanks to its menthol content, relaxes visceral muscles, improving digestive disorders. Finally, oregano contains carvacrol and thymol, natural antimicrobial substances. What Hippocrates intuited, science now measures. For him, herbs weren't mere remedies, but messengers of the earth. Each grew in a specific place, absorbing the qualities of the soil and the sun, transforming them into healing energy. Using them meant cooperating with nature, not dominating it. He admonished, "Take only what you need and thank the plant." Herbs didn't replace emergency care, but were tools for prevention and daily support. Even today, anyone wishing to rediscover that ancient alliance doesn't need to become a herbalist. It's enough to integrate simple practices, such as regularly consuming raw garlic, oxidized for a few minutes before use to activate its compounds. Drink fennel seed infusions after large meals, rub mint leaves on your temples to relieve headaches, or add oregano and thyme to foods for natural antimicrobial protection. Growing a plant on the windowsill, observing its growth, touching it, and caring for it with your own hands restores the original meaning of medicine as a dialogue between man and nature. The herbs that Hippocrates collected were neither rare nor expensive. They were the medicine of the people, accessible every day, rooted in the very earth that nourished mankind. Every time you choose a fresh plant instead of a pill, you renew that ancient pact. In the sunny market of Kos, among wicker baskets brimming with colors and scents, Hippocrates selected fruit with the precision of a jeweler. Bunches of purple grapes, ripe figs dripping with honey, pomegranates revealing a constellation of living rubies within. For him, these fruits were not mere desserts, but true elixirs of health. The Greeks considered them divine gifts, the pomegranate a symbol of immortality, the grape an offering to Dionysus, the fig a nourishment for athletes. However, Hippocrates sensed its real, not mythical power. He observed that those who consumed it extensively lived longer, were more resistant, and less susceptible to seasonal illnesses. In De Victu, in Morbis Acutis, he noted that fruits, consumed in season, balance the humors and strengthen the body. That grapes purify the blood, figs soften the intestines, and pomegranates fortify the stomach. Today, biochemistry confirms what the Greek physician's eye had discerned empirically. In 2004, Harvard's David Sinclair identified resveratrol, found in red grape skin, as an activator of longevity genes. This ancient juice of Dionysus proved capable of extending cellular life, protecting the heart, and mitigating inflammation. Figs, studied by Rutgers University, are rich in fiber, magnesium, and polyphenols that stabilize glucose and combat chronic fatigue, which is why Hippocrates offered them to athletes before competitions. Finally, according to research from the EPFL, pomegranate contains urolithin A, a molecule that regenerates mitochondria, restoring energy to aging cells. Even meta-analyses from the University of California have recognized that Mediterranean diets rich in these fruits drastically reduce cardiovascular, metabolic, and cognitive risks. Every bite of grapes, figs, or pomegranate thus becomes an act of prevention, a natural healing practice disguised as pleasure. Grapes in autumn, figs in summer, pomegranates on the threshold of winter. 2 or 3 servings of whole fruit daily, not juiced but whole, with fiber and peel where edible, support the microbiota and regulate the natural absorption of sugars. Color variety is also essential. Each shade corresponds to a different antioxidant, and composing a rainbow of fruits means expanding your body's protection. Eating fruit on a light stomach or in the morning, when your digestion is ready to handle it, prevents fermentation and bloating. Here too the same applies. Highly sugary tropical fruits should be balanced with more tart or fibrous ones. Every time you choose fresh fruit over packaged foods, you reaffirm the Hippocratic vision of medicine that comes from the tree, not the laboratory, of a body that heals itself through the earth, not against it. Among beverages, however, one occupied a singular place for Hippocrates: wine, both medicine and poison, a gift from the gods and a temptation for men. The Kazakh physician administered it diluted, never pure, believing that wisdom lies in moderation. In his treatise on diet, he wrote that, "Wine is a wonderful thing for man, both in health and in sickness, if used with justice and according to the individual's constitution." He distinguished between red wine, diluted 3 times with water, to invigorate and warm convalescence, white wine to purify the urinary tract, and hot, spicy wine for wet fevers. But he warned, excess dulls the mind and corrupts the liver. Greek soldiers received rations of watered-down wine not for intoxication, but to disinfect the water and provide quick energy, a practical and therapeutic use. Centuries later, the French paradox would reignite the debate. Despite a fatty diet and smoking habits, the French had a lower incidence of heart attacks, attributed to moderate red wine consumption. Harvard, Nature, and the British Medical Journal confirmed that a moderate amount of resveratrol activates longevity genes and protects the heart, but beyond this amount, the benefit disappears. Subsequent studies, such as one published in The Lancet in 2018, revealed that no amount of alcohol is entirely risk-free, as even small amounts increase the risk of cancer and accidents. The key, therefore, lies in the context. The wine of the ancients was natural, fermented from pure grapes, consumed with food, not alone or on an empty stomach, and an integral part of a diet rich in vegetables, fish, and olive oil. Spiritually, wine represented for the Greeks the mystery of transformation. The grape that dies as fruit and is reborn as nectar, decomposition that becomes rebirth, the invisible work of yeasts that transforms the simple into the sublime. But the very symbol contained danger. Dionysus, god of wine, was both revered and feared. Hippocrates warned that intemperance turns the remedy into poison. Drinking in moderation, therefore, means understanding the limit. If one wishes to follow his example today, the rules remain unchanged. Those who don't drink have no reason to start. Those who drink should do so sparingly. A single glass of red wine, preferably organic, with a meal and never on an empty stomach. Those who are ill, pregnant, or undergoing therapy should avoid it altogether. Even diluting wine with a little water, an unusual practice today, can restore its ancient, sober dimension. For Hippocrates, moderation was more than a virtue. It was the cardinal principle of health. One day, one of his disciples, scrupulous to the point of obsession, confessed to him that he followed every precept to the letter: whole grain bread, pure water, daily herbs, regular fasting. Yet he felt weak and unhappy. The master looked at him with compassion and said, "You have transformed medicine into disease. An excess of virtue is still excess." Thus was born the most subtle lesson of his teaching, the art of moderation. Moderation, for Hippocrates, is not renunciation, but a fluid balance between opposites, the ability to adapt to the needs of the moment. The body, he said, is a system of forces that constantly seeks harmony. Forcing it toward one extreme, whether of deprivation or abundance, leads to disorder. In his treatise on the humors, he described the 4 vital fluids: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile, and their balance as the foundation of health. Today we talk about homeostasis, but the essence remains the same. Well-being is the result of continuous dynamic adjustment. Too much food makes you tired, too little makes you weak. Too much exercise injures you. Too much inertia atrophies. Sleep and wakefulness, stillness and activity must alternate like the seasons. Modern science has rediscovered this truth. Studies from the Karolinska Institute and Stanford demonstrate that the body thrives when it alternates moderate stress and recovery. Extreme diets generate fleeting results and long-lasting damage, while flexible and consistent approaches ensure balance. Even psychology recognizes that obsession with health, orthorexia, can degenerate into anxiety and isolation, just as Hippocrates predicted. The Greeks called the virtue of temperance sophrosyne, not repression, but conscious harmony between desire and reason. It means listening to the body, recognizing its limits without imposing tyrannies. Nutrition, exercise, sleep, everything must follow a personal measure, not a universal dogma. The ancients lived in harmony with natural rhythms. They ate simple foods, walked a lot, and rested at sunset. This was their diet, their exercise, their medicine, integrated into daily life. Applying Hippocratic moderation today means following a few flexible rules. Eat well most of the time, but allow yourself small exceptions without guilt. Stop eating when you're full, not when you're full. Move every day, even just walking or dancing. Sleep according to your natural rhythm. Alternate periods of restriction with periods of controlled abundance. Evaluate your health not with numbers but with feelings of energy, clarity, and serenity. And above all, forgive your own lapses. Health for Hippocrates was not an immobile state of perfection, but a process of continuous adjustment, an art of navigating excesses and deficiencies without sinking into either. Thus, every time you reject fanaticism and choose balance, you honor his deepest legacy, a life principle that transcends mere medicine. The sun rose slowly over the island of Kos, and Hippocrates, before other men awoke, exposed himself to its first rays like one drinking in light. He knew that in the golden warmth of dawn lay a subtle energy, capable of reawakening life in plants, animals, and humans. For him, the sun was not merely a natural phenomenon, but an invisible medicine, an ordering force that regulates the entire balance of existence. In his treatise on air, water, and places, he wrote that human health depends on the harmony between the body and the elements that surround it, and among these, the sun occupied first place. Today we know that sunlight is essential for the synthesis of vitamin D, a regulatory molecule for over 2,000 genes, responsible for bone strength, immunity, mood, and longevity. What Hippocrates intuited by observing the complexions of his patients, modern science has measured in the laboratories of Harvard and the Karolinska Institute. The lack of light, typical of the winter months and confined lives, induces depression, chronic fatigue, immunodeficiency, and autoimmune diseases. He therefore recommended that patients expose their skin to the morning sun, since air and light are the true physicians of the body, and he observed that farmers, constantly bathed in light, were stronger and lived longer than city dwellers. Ancient sun therapies, now re-evaluated as heliotherapy, are based on the Hippocratic principle of moderation. Light heals, but only if used in moderation. Short, regular sunbathing, practiced in the morning or late afternoon, invigorates without harming. Excess, however, burns and corrupts, as happens with any unrespected natural force. Studies from the University of Copenhagen, 2020, have shown that 10 to 15 minutes of daily exposure are sufficient to maintain optimal vitamin D levels in most individuals. Morning light regulates circadian rhythms, improving sleep, metabolism, and concentration. Even psychiatry has recognized the effectiveness of light therapy in treating seasonal depression, unknowingly echoing Hippocrates' prescriptions. He also urged people to breathe fresh air every day, far from the miasma of cities and stuffy houses, because stale air corrupts the blood. Oxygen, an invisible medicine, is the body's primary need and, paradoxically, the most neglected. The ancients walked barefoot, opened their windows, and slept under the stars. We, however, live on recycled and artificial air. Hippocrates recommended breathing exercises similar to what we now call pranayama, slow, deep inhalations at dawn, holding the breath briefly before exhaling, to strengthen the lungs and clear the mind. Modern science, through diaphragmatic breathing, has shown that these practices reduce stress, lower cortisol, and improve heart rate variability, a sign of physiological resilience. Light and air, therefore, are not simple elements, but two vital currents that shape our health. When the body is deprived of them, it decays. When it re-embraces them, it flourishes. Every morning spent outdoors, every conscious breath, every ray of light that touches the skin represents a free and universal therapy, which no laboratory can replicate. Heliotherapy and aerotherapy, as Hippocrates called them, are the foundation of prevention. Walking in the sunlight, breathing deeply, sleeping in well-ventilated spaces, avoiding excessive sedentary and confined living. Even the quality of city air, he would have said, reflects collective morality. Where the air is corrupted, even the soul languishes. And after light and air, Hippocrates placed another pillar of health, movement. Life is motion, he said, and immobility is akin to death. For him, the human body is like a spring. If the water flows, it remains pure. If it stagnates, it rots. Hippocrates observed warriors, athletes, and farmers, Those who worked with their bodies enjoyed strength and serenity, while those who led idle lives easily fell into illness. His approach to movement was therapeutic, not aesthetic. The goal was not to sculpt the body, but to maintain a harmonious flow of life. He recommended daily walking, light jogging, gentle gymnastics, moderate wrestling, swimming in the sea, and even ritual dances. Every part of the body that is not used becomes ill, he wrote in his aphorisms, and this maxim is reflected today in the principles of modern physiology and preventive medicine. Studies by the World Health Organization show that 30 minutes of daily exercise reduces the risk of chronic diseases by 40%. But Hippocrates prescribed not just quantity, but quality. Exercise should bring pleasure, not fatigue. The body obeys joy, he stated, anticipating by millennia positive psychology and the importance of mental well-being in physical activity. Today, sports medicine confirms that harmonious movement, walking, yoga, swimming, dance, stimulates the production of endorphins, serotonin, and neurotrophic factors that regenerate the brain and mood. Inactivity, on the other hand, is a gentle poison. It alters blood sugar levels, weakens the heart, atrophies muscles, and dulls the mind. Hippocrates would have smiled at how science has finally translated into data what he intuited, that the body, when moving, thinks better, breathes better, and loves better. For him, movement was an act of thanksgiving to life, a prayer in the form of a gesture. Walking outdoors in the morning, in the sunlight and breathing in the fresh air, combines three of his fundamental medicines in a single daily ritual. Incorporating movement into your routine doesn't necessarily mean joining the gym, but finding joy in moving, whether it's dancing in the living room, gardening, or simply taking the stairs instead of the elevator. Yet one thing was still missing, perhaps the most mysterious: sleep. Hippocrates called it the silent physician, the one who heals while we sleep. He observed that the most stubborn fevers dissolved after a deep sleep, that wounds healed more quickly in those who slept well, that the insane regained lucidity after prolonged rest. Sleep and wakefulness must be equal, he wrote, meaning that the balance between activity and rest is the very condition of health. The master of Kos recommended falling asleep early, following the rhythm of the sun, and avoiding heavy meals or discussions before bed. He advised sleeping on simple beds, in ventilated rooms, in complete darkness, because night must be night. Modern science investigating melatonin has confirmed that exposure to artificial light in the evening delays the secretion of the sleep hormone and alters biological rhythms. Thus, the oldest remedy remains the most relevant. Turn off screens, breathe deeply, and let yourself be lulled by silence. Sleeping well is not a luxury, but an act of spiritual cleansing. And so, after teaching the wisdom of bread and water, fasting and herbs, the sun, air, movement, and sleep, Hippocrates turned his attention to the ultimate and highest of remedies, the purification of the soul. For, he said, no body can be healed if the soul remains polluted. In his thinking, disease was not merely a disorder of matter, but a disharmony between spirit and nature. When man distances himself from his essence, when the heart is overwhelmed by excessive passions or turbid thoughts, vital energy is lost, and the body, a faithful servant, manifests its pain. You cannot treat the part without treating the whole, he wrote in De Morbo Sacro, anticipating the holistic view by centuries. He encouraged doctors to question the patient not only about the symptoms, but also about their lifestyle, their emotions, the quality of their thoughts. If the soul is sad, he warned, no medicine will be effective. If the mind is serene, even the deepest wounds will be healed. This insight, misunderstood or forgotten for centuries, is now confirmed by psychoneuroimmunology, the science that demonstrates how emotions influence the immune and hormonal systems. Chronic anger, fear, and sadness produce stress hormones that inflame and weaken, while gratitude, joy, and compassion generate substances that repair and strengthen. Hippocrates knew, in the language of myth, what we describe in chemical formulas. He knew that serenity heals. For this reason, he recommended his patients to live in harmony with nature, to cultivate sincere friendships, to devote themselves to music, contemplation, and love. Laughter, he said, is the breath of the soul. Music, its medicine. He often encouraged his patients to go to the theater, to watch comedies and tragedies, because the spirit, freed from repressed emotions, finds balance. For Hippocrates, the ideal physician was one who cared for both the flesh and the spirit. The soul governs the body, as the helmsman governs the ship. If the helmsman is blind, the ship will dash against the rocks. Thus, he prescribed not only decoctions or fasting, but also silence, contemplation, prayer, and reconciliation. He urged forgiveness of oneself and others, since hatred is poison that the soul pours into its own blood. He recommended spending time in nature, as forests, the sea, and the hills were living temples for him. He who observes the trees and the winds learns more than he learns from 1,000 books. Modern man, confined by walls and artifice, has forgotten this primordial medicine. But today's eco-psychological science confirms its effectiveness. Walking in the woods lowers the heart rate, reduces cortisol, and increases serotonin. Contact with the earth electrically recharges the body, re-establishing its natural polarity. Japanese forest bathing, which has become a health trend, is simply the revival of the ancient Hippocratic teaching, letting nature heal us. The soul for Hippocrates was the vital principle that connects man to the cosmos. When breathing is in tune with that of the world, when thoughts are clear and the heart tranquil, health blossoms like a plant in spring. His final lesson to his disciples, recorded in the fragments of the Perizoes, was a prayer to life itself. Do not fight nature, but accompany it. Do not seek to dominate it, but listen to it. Within it dwells the wisdom that created you. This phrase, rediscovered and translated during the Renaissance, became the motto of Paracelsus and many enlightened physicians. It sums up the eternal core of Hippocratic medicine. Healing is not conquest, but return. Returning to nature, therefore, does not mean escaping the world, but rediscovering its rhythm. It means living in such a way that every gesture becomes harmonious with our surroundings, eating what the earth offers, moving according to the light of day, resting at night, breathing clean air, drinking living water, cultivating clear thoughts and benevolent feelings. It means understanding that man is not the master of nature, but its expression. When Hippocrates walked among the herbs and spoke with his disciples, he was teaching not just medicine, but a philosophy of life. Man is a microcosm that reflects the macrocosm, and health is merely the music of this correspondence. Thus, today as then, Hippocratic medicine is not a science of the past, but a path to the future. It unites what modern thought has separated: body and soul, nature and science, matter and spirit. It does not invite us to reject the advances of contemporary medicine, but to complement it with forgotten wisdom. For as the Master of Cos wrote, it is not the disease that must be cured, but the man. And curing the man means curing the whole. Here then the circle closes. Bread, water, fasting, herbs, fruit, wine, in moderation. Moderation, the sun, air, movement, sleep, serenity of the soul, and union with nature form the 10 immortal secrets of Hippocrates. 10 like the fingers with which man touches the world. 10 like the paths that lead to the same goal, life in harmony. When you drink pure water, when you walk in the light of dawn, when you choose simple food and thank the earth for giving it to you, when you breathe deeply and feel that the body is a temple, then you are already your own doctor. At that moment, the voice of Hippocrates still resonates, no longer among the stones of Kos, but in the hearts of those who understand. Nature is the best physician. She cures illnesses, teaches moderation, restores balance. We need only follow her. If this journey has touched you, leave a like to support the spread of these teachings. Leave a comment, write the word harmony, and it will be a sign that you are choosing the path of awareness, balance, and a return to your most authentic nature. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss upcoming episodes dedicated to ancient wisdom, the science of life, and the hidden power within us. I wish you balance, awareness, and light. May each of your days become an act of healing. Thank you for staying with me until the end. Until the next rebirth, and may nature be with you.